You're listening to the Connected Parenting Minute with Will and CarrieAnn Sandfest. This podcast is a conversation about parenting, using connection first, trauma-informed principles. Because when you lead with connection, everyone feels seen, which is the foundation to a more peaceful home. This podcast reminds you that you don't have to be a perfect parent, but we can all get a little better, one connected parenting minute at a time.
Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Will Standfest, and with me this evening is my lovely wife.
I'm CarrieAnn. It's nice to be here.
It is fabulous to be here, and I'm so glad to be talking to you tonight, baby. So I'm glad that you're joining us for this episode. We've got a great episode for you tonight. Tonight we're going to be talking about why adults matter within our child's lives. Mm-hmm. Because you notice I said adults, plural.
Ooh, good point.
And so it's an interesting topic to talk about because there's a lot of aspects to this. And I think it's really easy. It's our third point. I'm just going to tease it a little bit here.
Okay.
That a lot of us as parents want to be everything for our kids. Mm-hmm. And that's not really possible.
No. And I will give you also a little hint. When you have more than an average amount of children, it does make it quite impossible to be all things to your children.
Listen, 8 children is a totally normal amount of children. Will anybody in my audience back me up on this?
I have a feeling probably the numbers are on my side on this. It's not an average amount of children.
A totally normal amount of children. I didn't say it was average. I said it was totally normal.
Okay. Anyway.
So why do adults matter in a child's life? Point number 1, adults can model good behavior and bad behavior in your child's life.
That's absolutely true. I think there's a point that I wanted to bring up that when we have our children, we want them to do well. We want them to grow. We want them to learn. We often kind of think, we want them to be good kids. And I'm air quoting good kids. But I think we tend to forget that we want our children to be growing into good, and again, air quote, adults. Mm-hmm. And so when we have people in our kids' lives, I mean, we are normally the primary adults in our child's life for a good number of years, even before they start school, if they go to, a school setting. And we want those adults to model what it's like to be an adult. I think that sounds a little redundant, but the point being is that children are going to reflect what they see modeled for them. Have you ever found yourself saying something that your parent told you when you were a kid without even thinking about it?
Yes.
I mean, I know that I have.
I love my parents. If they ever listen to this, I love you guys. But yes, it has happened more than once, especially when you're heated, especially when you're a little agitated, stuff's going on, when you're not really thinking through your parenting as much as you might want to, or you may wish you would be more intentional about it. Mm-hmm. It is super easy. Something my mom said or my dad said to just come out of my mouth when I'm frustrated with my kid.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that is a common, I know I struggle with that too. Again, love my parents. Everybody does the best that they can. I think though that we tend to go back to those things that are ingrained in us when we're little. Mm-hmm. And so just being aware of that and understanding that piece as far as our parenting goes is important, because we want those things. Like, I know that I want those things. I want my kids to go back to, something might have slipped out of my mouth that I wasn't expecting, but I always remember my mom coming back to me and apologizing when she made a mistake.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great one.
And so I want that, as hard as it may be in the moment, or as hard as that situation, when it's laying on my heart and say, oh, that situation didn't go like I wanted it to. And I stop and I take that time to come back and say, hey, you know what? I said this and I was out of line. I was wrong. Will you please forgive me?
So that effort of apologizing is something that your kids will go to as they grow up because they've seen it modeled so many times.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of times. But I mean, it's good because, we need that. But as me, the parent, it's hard to apologize, but I have to be the adult.
Let me pick on that one point there, though, too, is you feel bad that you have to apologize. You feel bad that you make mistakes. Mm-hmm. And I think it's an important thing for us as parents to say out loud that a lot of us have parent guilt. We feel this pressure to be the perfect parent. We feel this pressure to apologize perfectly. We feel this pressure not to lose it all the time. Mm-hmm. And we say this not to add to the pressure, that all of us already feel. You know, if you're listening to a parenting podcast, you care about being a good parent and you're trying.
Right.
And I'm going to say to you, as my listener, you are doing a good job. You're trying hard and I'm proud of you and you can do this.
Go you. You can do this.
And I mean this genuinely. I don't want this to be a podcast that you go to and you get out of it and you're like, oh, all these things I'm doing wrong, you know. And one of the things we like to go to, and this is one of the reasons why we named this the Connected Parenting Minute. And one of our go-to phrase is you don't have to be a perfect parent. Is there's research out there that says, this is like scientific research. And I should probably actually memorize who did the research and all the things so I can back this up a little bit better. But that if you are a securely attached, connected parent, 30% of the time, your children are highly likely to have a secure attachment style as they grow into adults. 30%.
That's not a high number.
30% is not a failing grade when it comes to parenting. And so every time we talk about these things, don't feel bad. I want you to find little things you can do. Again, 1 minute at a time, one connected parenting minute at a time. We're trying to just pick out little things that you can just do a little bit better tomorrow, or you can do a little bit better today, and you can kind of keep moving forward. Because again, going back to CarrieAnn's point, more is caught than taught with our parenting. Your kids will pick up more on what you do than on what you say. What you say matters, and they'll hear it. But what we do day to day, again, let's go back to Instagram parenting. You know, the image on the subway of the little kid reading the book sitting in the parent's lap. It's like, how do you get your kids to read? Well, your kids don't do what I tell them to do. They do what I do. And it's the dad reading while the kid's sitting in the lap reading, you know, and just, you know, and again, this is Instagram cliche stuff, but there's an element of truth in here that if I'm on my phone all the time and then I chew on my teenager for being on his phone all the time, he's just modeling what I've been showing him.
Oops.
And so for parents that might be closer to our age, stop me if you've heard this phrase before, do what I say, not what I do.
Yeah, I may have heard that more than once. And I love my parents. They are absolutely the best parents. It was funny as I would hear that as a kid, and I was kind of a bit of a handful. I will be honest about that. My poor parents didn't know what to do with me. I was the firstborn child, the only girl, and I kind of ruled our home for a long time. I couldn't help it. I was a really good leader.
You're a strong and passionate leader.
I was, and I still am to some degree. It never sat well with me, that phrase, because I was like, hold the wagon here. You're telling me to do what you want me to do, but you don't have to do that.
It never sits well with you.
It doesn't. And I think our kids realize that too.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't sit well.
So being honest with yourself, do what I say, not what I do, does not work. And more is caught than taught.
Right.
So point number 2 is be the adult you needed as a child.
Yeah. I think we need to take the time to think back to when we were younger, before we had kids. And yes, the world was very, very different then. I mean, we're not that old, but the whole internet thing has exploded. Kids are very, very different. And that's fine, but some of the same needs are still there. And so we need to stop for a minute and think back to what we needed as young adults, as, preteens, as teenagers.
Well, when we were our kids' ages.
Right, exactly.
What things mattered to us? What things got through to us?
And I think one of those things is really relationships with people who cared about you.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, for sure.
We're wired for a relationship. We need that. Our kids need that. And right now, I think a lot of times our kids are getting a lot of those relationships through their social media or through, kind of half-hearted. It's different, but we still need relationship and we crave relationship.
Yeah.
And so when we're talking about the idea of why other adults matter in your child's life, I mean, you as an adult matter. But when we talk about adults mattering in a child's life, those adults that invest in our kids are showing them how to be healthy adults.
Yeah. Yep.
And so I think back to some of the most important relationships I had when I was probably in my mid-teens. Those relationships were adults that spoke into my life and that really cared, that genuinely cared about me. They didn't spend all of their time with me. They had their own lives, but they took the time to invest in me and ask me good questions. They would stop what they were doing and spend time with me. And it meant a lot. And I recognized that. And so to me, that really boosted my, I don't want to say self-confidence, but in a way it did. I was like, oh, I'm important. I matter to somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, I had more than one of those relationships. And I think back to my most meaningful relationships that I had. I mean, I had friends and stuff like that, but they were trying to figure out what's going on too. And so I think that when we invest in our kids, helping them find good relationships, that we are really helping them figure out who they are.
Yeah. Wow. That's really good. That's really good. And I think a couple of the things that stuck out to me in what you just said there too is that this is a person who made time for you, person who showed genuine interest in you, asked good, kind of add that active listening, good question kind of thing. And it sounds like it was more than just a one-way relationship too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things that she would always tell me was that we were a mutual blessing to each other. And this was a faith-based relationship because of how I met her. But she really did mentor me, but it wasn't like she's, oh, I'm just investing my time in you to help you grow. She actually, like, I had things to share from a different perspective, and she actually took those things and was like, hey, that was really helpful. And so, man, talk about making me feel like I was important.
Well, and then how much did you value her opinion when she took the time to actually say something into your life because there was a deep established relationship there? Her input, her coaching, her perspective, or even her correction was probably received a lot better because of the relationship you had with her. Well,
and I sought out her opinions about stuff. I mean, gosh, I remember I haven't talked to her in several years, but I remember reaching out to her at a certain time and just being like, hey, I really need your opinion on this. And she would give it to me. And like, that was a deciding factor in some of the things in my life. And it's just nice to have those people to be able to call and say, hey, I know we haven't talked in like 10 years or whatever. What do you think about this? And it was really important. I think back and I'm like, oh, maybe I should look her up.
You should. That's cool. And so for parents, being able to get out of that day-to-day survival, clean your room, do the dishes, take care of the dog, and being able to make time for those good questions, that genuine active listening, making your children feel like you have a mutual relationship, not just a one-sided relationship, gives you opportunity as a parent to be able to do the stuff that we want to do, the coaching, the what should I do with my life, Dad? Well, son, I really see this in you. The things we would deeply want to speak into our children, coach them about, and help guide them in life, that only comes after you have a deep connected relationship. And we can see that in mentor relationships we either had as children or that we have as adults. How many adults that don't really listen to you or kind of blow you off at work? How many of them, if they went to you and said, hey, CarrieAnn, I really think you need to change this about your life. It doesn't seem like you're doing the right thing here.
That doesn't make a difference.
I know. It's like, I'm like, I am instantly tuning you out because I literally care nothing about what you say. And if we want to have those opportunities to coach our children like that, we got to have that base relationship like our mentors had with us or like our mentors have now with, which comes into point number 3. We can't be all things at all times for our children. Our children need other adults in their lives to speak into them because as much as we want to be everything for our children, can't.
No, and that's really true. We tend to think that we have to be the end all and be all for our kids. And especially as they're growing older and especially as they're starting to see the world, as a teen, as even a young adult, they have to continue to branch out. And we can't leave that always up to chance. I think we need to be able to look and find mentors or find people that can speak into our kids' lives that are going to show them that intentional attention. I guess that's how you'd put it, but like be intentional with our kids of being able to pour into them. So we have some mutual friends that we've known them forever. They're part of our wedding party, that type of thing. And they have kids and their kids are younger than ours, but they've taken a genuine interest in a lot of our children, especially our older ones.
Yep.
And they have, this wasn't even a formal thing. This was just kind of like one of these things. They're like, oh, hey, why don't you come over and we'll chat about this? Or you can hang out with us or, just whatever situation that, it happened that the stars aligned and we were able to be around each other. And they would take that time to invest in our kid because it was our kid. Not only is that meaningful as for our friendship of just like, hey, you care about my kids. I know that it's meant a lot to our kids too, because they feel seen and valued. And it's not just, oh, that's mom and dad's friend. It's someone who's been around their entire life who's saying, hey, what's going on? How can I help?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's been a beautiful thing for our kids. And so what are some other places or ways that you think parents out there can help find healthy adults for their children to have relationships with?
So for us, we're part of a faith community, and really a lot of our kids have had good youth group leaders, people in the church who have invested in our kids. And that's been really helpful. It also is just, it feels a little, I mean, we've known a lot of these families for a long time because it's been a longstanding relationship. But a lot of times the kids or the adults that are volunteering in children's youth programs are normally they have like a whole background check thing. And so you know that they're they're not bad people to be around kids.
Yep.
But then I think the other thing is that a lot of times it's a really thankless job. And so they're not doing this just for whatever. They're
doing this because it matters to them.
Yeah, they deeply care about kids, and they recognize the importance of those relationships. And so they're investing in them.
Outside of that, I mean, family can be a good one. Maybe not crazy Uncle Carl.
Right.
But you know your family. Is there a grandparent? Is there an aunt or an uncle? Is there a distant cousin, so to speak, that would be willing to talk to your child or mentor them or encourage them? Or just, again, it really does start out with a relationship, with hanging out with them, take them out for lunch every other week or once a month for a little while, and a relationship will develop.
Right. And, family, friends, people you've known, in college, you just have to be creative and kind of think outside the box a little bit of who you want, your child's favorite teacher at church or at school.
That's another good one.
Being able to maybe you establish a little bit of relationship with them and be like, hey, I know that they really respect you. Would you be willing to pour into their life a little bit more? So those are just a few different ways to be able to help encourage healthy adult relationships with a child.
And I think a lot of that comes down to having your eyes open. If you know that it's a need, it's something that you want for your child, keep your eyes open. Look for those adults around you that you respect, that are healthy adults that you would want your kids to be emulating. And so I think that covers our 3 main points. Let's do our quick recap of the 3 main takeaways from this episode. Number 1 is,
remember that adults can model good behavior and bad behavior, but that we want our children to be emulating good adult relationships.
Because more is caught than taught.
Right, exactly.
Number 2,
be the adult you needed as a kid. Remember that our kids need some of the same things that we needed when we were younger. And just to be aware of that and looking from their perspective, not just your own.
Absolutely. And then number 3, I think is really, you can't be all things to your children at all times. That good, healthy adult relationships matter in your children's life. Seeking out additional healthy adults for your child's life, to be a mentor, to be a friend, to speak into their lives is really helpful and really important. Any last thoughts, honey?
Actually, I did have one last thought. We had talked about our point number 3 was recognizing we can't be all things. A therapist can be a good option. And just establishing that this isn't you did something wrong or anything like that, but it can be a healthy form of being able to talk with somebody besides yourself. There doesn't have to be some big major problem going on, but just having that mindset that could also be another option to kind of give your child someone else to process things with.
That's really good. I really like that. That's a great suggestion. And there's some other benefits too there where you can help fight some of the stigma of, well, I've got to be a crazy person to see a therapist, which is not true.
Nope.
It would be a good opportunity for your child to talk to a licensed therapist because that's their job. They're good at this stuff, helping people process. All right. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate each one of our listeners. Please reach out with any questions or comments that you have. If you could leave us a rating or a review on one of the platforms you're listening on, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other one, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you for your time. I pray that this has been a blessing to you, that you've learned something. And as we go, we want to remind you,
You don't have to be a perfect parent,
but we can all get a little bit better, one connected parenting minute at a time.
Thank you so much for listening to my mom and dad's podcast. It means a lot to me. Make sure to like and subscribe on the way out.
For more parenting tips or to connect with us, check out the Connected Parenting Minute on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Or you can send us an email using connectedparentingminute@gmail.com.